Theory of hair cutting. Bone structure. The bone structure of a client is so important. This is your canvas that you're going to work on. I know that I can cut the same haircut on 10 people, but it will look completely different depending on the bone structure that they have. We have all seen haircuts that have really thick amounts of hair in the back area and then hardly any hair in the sides. And to me, it's because the sides and the back do not have an even amount of density between them. In the SR Education Comprehensive Cutting Program, we actually section off the top, the sides and the back in a specific area, and it is decided by the bone structure. The first area that I would look at is the parietal ridge. The parietal ridge can be found by using your comb. Place your comb on the top of the head and then simply round the comb through into the sides. Where you find that round balance point, that's where we're going to section off for the top area. I will section off at the parietal ridge on the top, and then at the back I will section off where the round of the crown exists. Put your comb on the top of the head, round through into the back, and that round balance point there is where we section off on the top. The top will exist at the parietal ridge on each side to the back of the crown, and this should give me more of a horseshoe shaped section on the top. This is the natural curvature that exists on the top of the head area. So we tend to section off the top in a horseshoe shaped section. Sometimes in class we also can use a triangular shaped section, and that triangular shaped section is usually for specific haircuts. The shape that I do not use when I section off the top is a square or a rectangular section, and I usually save that for more men's hair cutting because it gives a wider and a broader amount of weight across the back. A woman's haircut, I usually use a horseshoe shaped section or sometimes a triangular shaped section. The sides and the back should be sectioned off at the mastoid process. It's very important when you're working between the sides and the back to get more of an even distribution of weight between the sides and the back. We actually section off at the mastoid process, and this gives me more hair in the side area. If you section off the sides ear to ear, you often end up with a lot of density and hair in the back of your haircut and then hardly any hair in the sides. And what this ends up looking like is really thin, straggly pieces of hair in the sides, but then all of this heavy weight in the back. And your haircuts often end up just looking really unbalanced. To find the mastoid process, take your comb, put it in horizontally, and just find the round at the mastoid. This is where we section off the sides from the back. I often think of it as being behind this empty space over the ear. So we've sectioned off at the mastoid process, and then the back area exists from the mastoid to the mastoid. So this is the back area. This is the side area. We have a more even density between the back, the sides, and then the top. The main areas that are important to us when making the decisions in the consultation are the occipital bone, the mastoid process, and the parietal ridge. The occipital bone is a very important bone structure that we need to really pay attention to in the consultation. When the client sits down, I'm going to feel her occipital bone, and what I want to think about is how flat or how prominent the occipital bone is. This will really help me to decide what technique I'm going to be using. If someone is flatter, then I'm definitely going to think about building up some weight, maybe use some graduation, for example. If someone is already very round, I might try and remove some weight and use a layering technique. Also, I really need to think about the profile when feeling the occipital bone, because the occipital bone is on the same level as the nose. So what does this person look like? If the nose is prominent, the last thing I want to do is build a lot of weight directly on top of the occipital bone, because it's going to make them look wider. I would need to change the balance of the haircut. The second bone structure that is very important as well, and often gets missed out, is the mastoid process. The mastoid process is that bone structure that sits behind the ear. It's actually quite big, but we're looking for the area that rounds behind the ear. How prominent or how narrow this bone structure is going to really help you to make a decision at what shape you're going to use. And all of these things in the consultation need to be put together so you can make the correct decision. We always want to make the client look the best that they can possibly look. So taking into consideration all of these things is really going to help you to make the correct decision and make the correct choice of technique and shape for the client. Once you have felt the mastoid process, you need to make that decision on the shape. So for example, someone that's very narrow through here, I might actually decide to build a more square shape. I might decide to put some corners in there and build a square shape across the back to make the head look a little bit larger. I also need to look at the client that is wider and flatter across the back. They might have a very prominent mastoid process. That client, I might need to do a round shape on to make them look a little bit more curved. The parietal ridge will have a direct effect on suitability in the face. For example, if someone is kind of narrow and a bit more pointy, then I need to think about maybe building something that is going to look more suitable to that face shape. If someone is wider in the lower part of their face, then I have to really think about building something at the parietal ridge to balance them. If someone is wider through the top of their face and more narrow in the bottom, then I would definitely want to keep them a little bit flatter on the parietal ridge and build a bit more weight towards the bottom of the haircut. Suitability is so important, and what I prefer to do is actually look at someone's face and really try and identify their best features and draw attention to them. I always like to look at where the face is widest, and I try and, diffuse that. I would never put the widest part of the haircut at the widest part of their face. I'm always going to try and use the opposites to balance them, and I'm all about trying to make someone look the best they can possibly look. I know there's a lot of information out there that says if you have this face shape, you should have this haircut. But to me, that's very kind of robotic and really takes away the personality of the person. I really prefer to focus what is this person's good points and really bring them out.